Hello and welcome to day 5 of the Youth Perspective on CND.
Hi, I was able to join two main side events. The first one was on responsible legal regulation, a pathway to good governance and planetary health. The second one was on women who use drugs, intersecting injustice and opportunity. The first one was mainly providing examples and cases of harm reduction services and strategies and tactics that have been employed in contexts like Cambodia, where it was more of a prohibitionist approach, to now which is more friendly, targeting human rights, well-being and livelihoods of people who use drugs. Some of the examples centered on provision of treatment centers and provision of support services, and also providing treatment as an alternative to otherwise incarceration of people who use drugs. They are now looking at providing services like naloxone treatment to people who use drugs, and also supporting the families of persons who use drugs. The second one was more of presenting the struggles and successes of women who use drugs. It also cut across spaces where young women especially, and also women in general who use drugs, have been able to have access to support services and also navigate the otherwise oppressive and challenging regimes where they find themselves, and also the patriarchal context where they find themselves. And I think these two scenarios, or to support services and also navigate the otherwise oppressive and challenging regimes where they find themselves, and also the patriarchal context where they find themselves. And I think these two scenarios, or these two events are very critical and also important for the work at YouthRise, especially as we are looking at working with the people who are exposed and at risk of discrimination, of their rights being infringed upon, and also providing critical access to harm reduction services for them. It's very important that we also learn from some of these contexts so that we can ramp up our support and also our work in these areas. The two-side events also were important, as it also helped to paint a picture of some campaigns, some advocacy, and some successes that these contexts have been able to realize despite the challenging situations or conditions that prevail. Moving forward, I would also look at adopting some of these key lessons so that I can apply these lessons and best practices in the Ghanaian context, because also we work with key populations and other marginalized groups, and these strategies and new learnings will come in handy. Thank you.
Today I also attended a UNAIDS side event titled Reaching Global AIDS Targets Through Harm Reduction and Reform of Restrictive Drug Policy Frameworks. So this was a very interesting side event. The title certainly enticed me, and there was one speaker in particular that I wanted to talk about. There was a young person who uses drugs on the panel, and this is an Indigenous young person called Skylar Nibi Mshkiki. I really hope I got that right. Yeah, Skylar is Two-Spirit and trans, and is from First Nations Cree. His family lineage comes from Treaty Number 9, known today as Atawapiskat First Nation. Really wanted to get that right. They introduced themselves in the native language, which was really great to see. I really appreciated that. And spoke a little bit about being an Indigenous young person who uses drugs and a trans young person who uses drugs. For me, as a trans person, this was like a breath of fresh air at CND. Usually I'm the trans person speaking about being a young trans person who uses drugs. So it was really, yeah, it was amazing to hear someone discuss the issues faced by my community specifically, and also learn about the issues faced by the Indigenous communities in Canada, and in North America and other parts of the world, which is a perspective which is not really heard very often. Skylar said that the global AIDS targets that were set out will not be reached without decriminalisation and the implementation of harm reduction services. They also criticised the sort of trauma-based model where drug use is a result directly of trauma, but that takes away the enjoyment that people get from doing drugs and the other reasons outside of trauma which people use drugs because of. They said that decrim needs to be sensitive to the needs of Indigenous people, and also pointed to the fact that young people who use drugs, or even people who use drugs, are often put into the same category together, when each person who uses drugs is different and has unique needs based off of their ethnicity, their gender identity, whatever other impacting factors maybe influencing their drug use. So this was amazing. I wanted to speak about this person specifically just because I was kind of blown away by how incredible it was. They did a really great job, and like I said, I think it's just very seldom that you hear these perspectives at CND, and certainly it's very seldom that we as Youthrise hear these perspectives at CND, because usually it's in a side event that we are organising or co-sponsoring, or it's in a side event with some of our partner organisations or the youth organisations. But this one was organised by UNAIDS, like I said, had a number of very high profile co-sponsors, IDBC, HRI, other organisations which I've now forgotten. So yeah, it was really nice to hear all of the right talking points being brought up at a side event like this, and hearing the perspective of some of the more marginalised communities of young people who use drugs. This morning, I went to what could possibly be my first 8 a.m. side event ever. I went to a side event hosted by Smart Approaches to Marijuana. It was titled Lessons Learned from Commercial Marijuana. So I've been going to the side events hosted by Smart Approaches to Marijuana since my very first year of going to CND. And I always kind of enjoy it. We have very different outlooks on drug policy, and I kind of enjoy going and acting as a dissenting voice against some of the things they're saying. One thing I really noticed this year was that they had co-opted a lot of sort of harm reduction-y or like social justice language. They said that the legal market for cannabis was a very socially unjust one. Very few people of colour are able to enter the legal market, which is true. And they even went so far as to advocate for the decriminalisation of marijuana instead of the legalisation. This was a first that I've heard from this particular group. I'm not sure when this, when they started thinking this, when they started advocating for decrim. They had a speaker from, she was a Democratic politician. I'm not sure in what house, or if it's at a state level or what it was, but she also advocated for decrim. And throughout, to be honest, most of the critiques they gave of the legal market model were really just critiques of capitalism in general, the social injustice, the hyper commercialization. All of these things are not really problems which are unique specifically to the legal weed market. I raised this with them, and they said that legalization equals commercialization, which again is just a critique of capitalism. It's not really a critique probably of the specifically the weed market. This is a phenomenon that you can see in all markets, in all free markets. So yeah, it was a disappointing side event, but like I say, I always kind of enjoy going to it, and like confronting them a little bit and getting into a bit of a fight. So yeah, that was interesting.
The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes Liaison and Partnership in Brazil presented last Friday the side event sharing the experiences of Brazil and Mexico in social protection and people who use drugs in the context of detention control hearing, based on the reflections of the Fazenda Justiça program. The Fazenda Justiça program works to structural challenges of the criminal justice system and social educational system based on recognition of the unconstitutional state of things in Brazilian prisons by the Supreme Court. This is a continuity of the partnership started in 2019 between the National Council of Justice and the United Nations Development Program, with important support from the Ministry of Justice, the Public Security, and other collaborations involving the public sector, the private sector, and the civil society. The program comprises a national plan with 28 actions from different phases of the penal and cycle, adapted to the reality of each unit of the Federation and the protagonism of local actors. The actions bring together the best practices from different administrations of the CND and are divided into technical support, donation of inputs, and institutional articulation. The program's target audience includes beneficiaries entry-level, judiciary and actors in the criminal justice system, and final-level beneficiaries. Currently, about 800,000 people in prison system and 100,000 adolescents in the social educational system in open or closed system are being part of the Fazenda Justiça program. Because of its comprehensive character, the program is aligned with several United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially the Goal 16, which is peace, justice, and effective institutions. The Fazenda Justiça fosters the protagonism of each key actor to make an impact based on evidence of what really works. Based on the cycle of accountability, which is a prison and social educational system, this method has been impactful in areas such as economic improvement, management of the state, and local resources, giving opportunities for each citizen and active participation as a member of society and justice and democratic strengthening.